Daniel had resigned himself to solitude. After his divorce and the disappearance of Bear, his black lab mix, 10 years ago on a camping trip in the Adirondacks, he retreated to a quiet cabin in Vermont. Bear had been his everything, his shadow through grief and change, and when the dog vanished without a trace, it left a silence that nothing else could fill. Then, one snowy morning, that silence was broken. Daniel was splitting wood behind his cabin when he heard a low bark. At first, he thought his memory was playing tricks on him, but the bark came again, familiar, throaty, unmistakable. A black dog emerged from the tree line. Same build, same eyes, same scar behind his right ear. Daniel's breath caught. The dog stared at him with cautious hope, tail wagging low. Slowly, Daniel dropped to his knees. "Bear?" he whispered. The dog stepped forward, then broke into a run, crashing into Daniel's chest. Tears spilled down Daniel's face as he buried his hands in the dog's fur. "You came back." Bear stayed the night, curled beside the fireplace like he'd never left. But the questions burned. Where had he been all these years? Haunted by the need for answers, Daniel dug out an old photo of their last camping trip, the one where Bear disappeared. The backdrop showed a familiar ridge in the Adirondacks. That same week, Daniel loaded his truck and drove 6 hours to that trailhead, Bear at his side. The forest had changed, but the memories hadn't. 2 hours in, they reached the clearing. As Daniel stood there, a strange metallic creak echoed nearby. Bear lifted his head and took off toward a half-buried trailer hidden beneath years of brush and snow. Inside the abandoned trailer, Daniel found an old lantern, a pile of empty food wrappers, and a leather collar. He picked it up, hands shaking. The tag, though rusted, still bore one word: Bear. "You're looking for the dog, aren't you?" came a voice behind him. Daniel spun around to find a weathered man in a patched coat standing in the doorway. Tall, thin, pale eyes beneath a scruffy brow. "I'm Frank," the man said. "I didn't take him. He found me." Frank explained that Bear had limped into his camp 8 years ago, injured, starving, but alive. Frank fed him, healed him, and the dog never left, though he often wandered off into the woods, always returning by nightfall. Until a few days ago, he didn't. Daniel listened, stunned. "You took care of him?" he asked. Frank nodded. "We looked after each other." Moved by gratitude and curiosity, Daniel invited Frank back to the cabin. "It's dry. There's food. Bear likes you. Maybe we both need company." Frank hesitated, but then followed. Back in Vermont, the days turned into weeks. Frank slept on the couch at first, helping around the place in return for meals and a warm fire. Bear was in his prime again, bouncing between both men like he'd never been gone. Frank, though rough-edged, was kind and funny and broken like Daniel had been. Eventually, Frank opened up. He disappeared into the woods after losing his wife in a car crash he blamed himself for. The pain was too great, the guilt heavier than any pack. So he walked away from the world. Daniel told him about his own darkness, the crushing silence after Bear vanished, the loneliness that followed his marriage ending. Somehow, through Bear, they'd both survived. Then one July afternoon, a blue Subaru pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, anxious, scanning the property, until her eyes locked on Bear, sunbathing in the grass. "Benny?" she gasped. Bear's ears perked. He bolted toward her, whining, tail going berserk. Daniel and Frank watched, dumbfounded, as the woman dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around Bear. "I can't believe it," she said, crying. "This was our dog, my son's. He disappeared years ago during a camping trip. We searched everywhere." Daniel stepped forward. "You called him Benny?" "He had a scar behind his ear from a berry bush," she said. "We thought he was gone forever." Daniel smiled, overwhelmed. He showed up at my place a few months ago. I thought he was mine. You were both his, she said. Maybe he needed both of you. Her name was Claire. She returned a few weeks later with her son, Ben, now a college kid, who'd never stopped dreaming of his lost dog. Bear, or Benny, ran straight to him. That fall, Daniel and Frank built a second cabin behind the first. Claire started visiting often, baking pies, bringing fresh vegetables, sitting with them by the fire as Bear snored at their feet. By winter, she stayed most weekends. Frank started attending vet support groups in town. Daniel reopened his woodworking shop. The quiet, broken lives they'd lived slowly stitched into something whole. One evening, with golden leaves spinning around them, the four of them sat on the bench overlooking the valley. Daniel, Frank, Claire, and Ben. Bear rested between them, eyes half closed, heart at peace. Daniel looked at him and whispered, "You brought us all back." Frank grinned. "Hell of a dog." Claire leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. He wasn't lost, just on a mission. And Daniel knew then, without doubt, Bear had never really left them. He'd simply taken the long way home.